Welcome to the Growler, a Who Dat podcast hosted by Paul Dana and other bald friends like Mo Egger, Dave Nenemetz, home of all your Bengals breaks, takes. Welcome to the Growler.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Balds Don't Lie. Paul Dana Jr., Jay Morrison here with you on a Tuesday as we're coming off of our live show that we had last night at BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar at the Banks. Big fun time had by all in attendance, including your buddy Jay, who continues to win stuff, won the Joe Burrow jersey giveaway last night. Just everywhere he goes, he's winning things. I just keep hearing these stories of everywhere he goes, he just keeps falling into stuff.
I think I'm rubbing off on him. You know, I've always been the lucky one, and now he's coming up big and winning these things. So they at the game on the last home game, his wife won a Jamar Chase autographed helmet. So yeah, congratulations to Hal and Tara.
I need to hang out with you, and maybe I'll stumble into some good stuff.
Do we need to investigate the integrity of your wheel? I mean, you spun the wheel; it was your wheel. There's no way that was pure luck.
You're right. The integrity of the wheel has been called into question. It didn't take long. It wouldn't take long until the integrity of the game was coming into question. There's no doubt about that. Well, we are not gonna. You're not gonna question our integrity on this show because we have two men of integrity that are going to be joining us on today's show. Of course, Mo Egger, ESPN 1530, is going to be here momentarily. We're going to get his take on a few of the things coming off of Thursday and where the Bengals are at in the course of this season, specifically on offense with Joe and Jamar. And we're going to bring in Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie came to our show last night. I was going to post like the whole show. We ended up with an audio issue on the back end of it where James Rapine from SI, Locked on Bengals Talk, James was great. And those that came down got the full complement of all the takes. But the audio wasn't as good as I wanted on the back end of that. But it's good enough. And so the portion with Charlie, we're going to bring you that here from last night. And we talk a little bit about a lot of reliving the bad takes and discussing why they've gone bad and what future takes we believe will play out in the second half over the course of this season. And so we'll have that with Charlie. We'll go over your growler bets, run, pass, or boot, RBs, all of those things as we get through this show. Our next live show down at BetMGM Nation Kitchen Bar in the Banks is going to be on the 21st, Thursday, the 21st at 7:00. We are doing a special show. Todd Frazier is going to be our guest. And so I'm going to do, you guys know at the beginning of the season, we talked about doing the rewatch, my favorite game. And we had Dan Hord on, and his favorite game, of course, was he said it was the playoff drought breaking win against the Raiders in 21. And we went through that. You guys that are familiar with the program know about these that we like to do. We want to do them more often. And Todd Frazier gave us a perfect opportunity to relive one of the great moments in our recent city sports history. And that was the 2015 Home Run Derby. So we're going to air that from 5 to 7 up there. We're all going to have rewatched it. And we're going to discuss every angle of that home run derby, the fallout, the legacy, the night, the minutia with Todd, myself, C. Trent Rosecrans, and Jim Day, Reds broadcaster Jim Day, all going to be down there on that panel. It's going to be awesome. We're really looking forward to it. Meet and greet with Todd afterwards. So it should be a ton of fun. Come down to that. That will be, and all the deals that we do for our Growler show is going to be going on there. 7:00. On the 21st, Thursday, the 21st, we'll be doing that show down there. So we hope to see you there. Should be a lot of fun. Looking forward to the Growl Pals showing up as they're one to do.
There's a Bengals connection to that, if I remember right. Your interview with Andy Dalton, was that the same day as the home run derby, or was that the day before?
Day after? So yeah, the celebrity softball was on Sunday night, and then Andy Dalton booed at that game and talking to him afterwards, which set the background for his breakout 2015 season at that point. A lot of action that weekend. Yeah. A lot of action that weekend, no doubt. So with all of that with Todd, looking forward to that. Before Mo drops in, let's touch on some news, Jay. The Bengals, hey, big day for bringing guys in. Workout time, Jay.
Yeah.
Xavier Howard brought in cornerback, 4-time Pro Bowl cornerback. friend of the program for Lou Anarumo, who loves Xavier Howard. We've talked about this for a long time, dating all the way back to really right after the draft. Like, hey, he would make sense as a veteran corner that you could try to bring in. Obviously, he's had some off the field stuff that's problematic. But that said, Xavier Howard in for a visit and leaves without a deal. And hey, Leonard Fournette in for a visit. Leonard Fournette need help in the running back room. They've needed a veteran to help them fill out the back of that room for a while now. A Zach Moss injury. It just could use a little bit of a help. Leonard Fournette's here and leaves without a deal. So no deals happening with Howard or Fournette right now. But don't worry. Fear not, Jay. Who's here now?
Gary Brightwell.
Ooh. He
of 41 career carries, signed straight to the practice squad. So this is not any kind of instant help, but it is another running back to add to the room. They were in a kind of an advantageous position too, because normally teams do these workouts on a Tuesday, but because coming off the mini bye, they were able to get those guys in a day early, do the workouts on a Monday, but just either didn't like what they saw or couldn't make it work or whatever the reasons were. That the two big names that everyone was familiar with, they had them in and let them get out.
I mean, the fact that it's November 12th.
Yes.
And you're just now bringing in a veteran corner. We were literally talking about this after the draft.
Yes.
Veteran corner? No, we don't need one like the young guys, right? So not going to bring him in. Okay, well, what about in camp, right? Oh, what about after the Dax Hill injury? Oh, veteran corner time? No, November 12th. True reeking of desperation move on that one. Like, just how did it take this long? How did it arrive at this point? And now's the time? Now, it feels a lot of chairs on the Titanic happening right now is what it feels like.
You only have to pay him half as much if you bring him in November instead of bringing him in July.
It's an odd one. There's no doubt about it. So that was kind of the news on signings from yesterday. Injuries, Jay, how would you classify some of the injury updates? A lot of vagaries still happening around Orlando Brown and Tee Higgins.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Zach did say that they took part in the walkthrough, but it's a walkthrough. You know, you don't have to be super healthy to take part in those. He said day to day. That's what they've been saying. You wonder. You always look at this when it gets into the 4-game range, because it'll be 4 games for both those guys if they don't play Sunday, and then it's, well, why didn't they go on IR? Part of that is you don't know. You don't know for sure that it's going to be a 4-week injury. Part of it is you don't really need those roster spots. I mean, the guys that are inactive on game day are not really going to be giving you much anyhow. So I think T is the bigger question to me, because those injuries are so unpredictable, but he's a guy that you could put in a limited package, in a red zone package, and just get him on the field and use him sparingly. Orlando's a guy where if he's going to go, he's going to have to go the whole game. So maybe Wednesday we get more clarity on where those guys stand when we see if they're practicing or not. But right now, I think it's 50-50 at best that those guys play.
Yeah, and interesting. We talked with James a lot about this last night, and we can get into it with Mo here too, just about the interesting situation they find themselves in with this game specifically and Tee Higgins. So on that note, let's bring in our friend Mo Egger. All right, Mo Egger, ESPN 1530. How you doing, buddy? Are you how was your trip to Baltimore?
Up until the failed 2-point conversion, it was awesome. I had a great time. I love Baltimore, love the city, love the stadium. Fans were cool. I did nearly watch 2 Ravens fans brawl with each other. Cooler heads did prevail, but beyond that and beyond the game itself, it was a good time.
Baltimore's such a sneaky great road trip. It really is. I say it all the time. Like, it is just, I know people like, oh, in the north, what? It is just everything that you want out of a good road trip. Especially this time of year was like gorgeous weekend. Like
awesome.
It was a perfect weather. Like there's stuff going on. Unbelievable game. Their night atmosphere is awesome. It was just it is really a sneaky good trip.
Yeah, I've now gone twice specifically for Bengals games. I've not had a bad experience. I saw the Bengals win in 2014. I haven't had a bad experience with any of the locals. No bad experience at the game. Baltimore's got a cool late night area, which I enjoyed. That's a really, really cool, easy to get to, right? Pretty easy place to get to. Not a very expensive city by any stretch of the imagination. Cool stadium, cool game day vibe. Like I really, the 2 times I have gone, I've really enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
Direct flights, cheap flights. It's all good. How decked out were you in Bengals gear? Were you? Is that why fans were cool because you were kind of muted, or
no?
Did you guys...
I had on a pullover and a hat, but like I'm not a jerk. I mean, many might argue, but I'm like if you're gonna yell at me, I'm okay, fine. We're rooting for a different football team. Like, okay, fine. But I got none of that. So I don't invite trouble. As a general rule. And so maybe somebody yelled at me, but I didn't care. And like, I think it helped the fact that the game was really good. Right. And so there was a tremendous sense of unease, I felt like, in the stadium from pretty much the get-go. And maybe that muted the folks who, had it been a blowout, would have been a little bit more vocal in their disdain for opposing fans.
Yeah, one of the better games that I've witnessed in person, no question. All right, I want to ask you this. We were kind of starting to discuss Tee Higgins. Where's your level? Because I feel like this Chargers game particularly, you can kind of circle it when in the offseason we heard Adam Schefter talk about business decisions, and to me this is like that personified. This game is business decision personified, where T's not all the way back. Maybe he is. We don't know specifically on the quad, but this is the game where, like, you probably should be back, but there's a bye on the other side. And he could say, look, I'm still not 100%. I'm like 95. These are numbers I'm making up. But, like, he could say that, and then, but the bye on the other side and good, and he can play out the rest of the season after that. But they need this one. There's the number one defense in football is over there. They need T. They need this one. Where do you stand on concern over business decisions with him now, and what the second half of his season could look like going forward in that regard?
So for me, maybe unreasonably so, I am going to default to New Year's Eve last year when Tee Higgins, obviously physically compromised, was still putting himself on the field, apparently without his coach's knowledge. Until I see otherwise, that guy that I saw is putting his team and the team's performance first. Now, that was a do-or-die game for the Bengals. This is kind of a do-or-die game for the Bengals. Like, they need this one. So I will assume if he can go, he's going to go. But let's say they don't win this one. Do we get a redo of 2019 with A.J. Green, where not only is he not playing, but he's out there before games running routes, showing everybody I'm good? Because, like, at some point, if T is going to get what he is looking for, I would imagine he feels like he has to demonstrate, I'm good, I'm healthy, right? I'm okay. Is he going to do that in games, or is he going to do that before games? I don't know. But until I see or hear otherwise, I am going to assume that he is going to play if he feels like he can play without further aggravating the injury, and can play and still help the team, because I've seen that before. But look, in this day and age, man, I don't think anybody would be surprised. I don't think anybody would be surprised if we found out after the fact that any player, quote, made a business decision. What I want to know is, when did this enter our lexicon? Business decision. I feel like I can't watch a highlight show without hearing about business decisions, or I can't watch one of those shows on cable TV where they scream at each other about sports and look really intense without hearing about business decisions. It's kind of what makes this game on Sunday really fascinating, because it you lose this one, maybe it sends the season in a direction that business decisions get made. But until that happens, I will assume that T's availability or lack thereof is entirely related to his health.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, obviously not a doctor, but it doesn't feel like a quad injury is something where even if he re-injures it and he has to miss more time, okay, that's a risk you have to take. That's a risk he has to take. But it doesn't feel as though it's going to be something that would hamper him going into next year. The reputation of having all these soft tissues. That's going to go with him either way. But
Yeah.
it's not an injury that's going to have a long recovery time that's going to slow him down for OTAs and camp and all of that stuff next year, wherever he signs. So, part of me thinks that for that reason, and again, we're not having dinner with these guys, but I feel like we've gotten to know him pretty well since he's been here in 2020. And he just doesn't seem like that kind of guy. He wants to be out there. He wants to play. He wants to do what's best for this team, for his teammates, Jamar, Joe in particular. And I think if he can go, even if it's not 100%, I would think he would be out there. I just don't see what the downside is. And Paul, you've talked about this a lot. What injury anymore do you look at and say is career threatening? I mean, he's not really putting anything at risk other than potential missing more games this year. And if this is the do or die game, then those games may not even mean anything. So I would think that he's got more reasons to play than not play, business decisions aside.
They changed the business this offseason. I mean, I think the thing that I retort to the concept of last year against Kansas City was the Bengals changed the business this offseason. They didn't trade him. They didn't pay him. They diminished his worth, and that he's coming out here trying to play as well as he can and think about that going forward. And so how the team views you affects that. You know what I mean? It changes the way that you feel about this. And I just feel like that makes it a little bit different. And yeah, the one injury he needs to worry about actually isn't that it's season ending. It's that these nagging soft tissue things continue to follow him and continue to tank people's seasons. And so you're like, well, that kind of tank. The Bengals season was done before you fully got going. It is the way what the analysis of this season would be if he can't play and they lose maybe partially because of it. I just feel like this is one that you have to be able to be a part of the game plan. No one's saying you need to go out there and play 95% of the snaps, but I think you need to be part of the game plan this far removed. And only he knows exactly what it is, and re-aggravating it and then missing more games is a problem. If you just want to have a dominant stretch to conclude the season and leave in people's memory banks, I get that. And he's earned the right to tell them I'm not good enough because they earned the right to take that news. And they could have avoided that if they wanted to by paying him. But for that fact, I just still feel like this is kind of the one that's where the rubber meets the road on that concept.
He's got a reputation deserved for always being hurt. He's got a reputation for being a gamer. Which one does he want to enhance?
Yeah, it's a great point. I want to switch topics to another thing that I know you and Tony talked about yesterday, and that I wrote about in the fallout from Thursday, and that is wasting yet another Joe and Jamar masterpiece. Mm-hmm. And how many times can you do this? and there's just only so many of those games that you're going to get. And, I had the stat out there where the rest of the league this year is 38-1 when scoring 33 or more points. And the Bengals are 2-3. I mean, it's almost impossible for this to be happening. And we again see, do you feel like obviously they are wasting it, or who's responsible for wasting it? Like, how do you view the fact that it looks like it's wearing specifically on Joe Burrow?
Well, what I said on the show with Tony yesterday was, if I ran the team, if I owned the team, I would say, okay, I had to pay this quarterback. I paid him. And maybe had to redo some things that I would typically not do in order to pay him. And I'm going to have to pay this wide receiver, so I'm going to pay him. And those two guys are giving me my money's worth. Obviously, with Jamar, we're talking about future money more so than what he's making right now. I'm getting what I need from those guys. Okay. So I had to do those two things, or I have to do these two things. Those guys are doing what I'm paying them to do. Why are we not winning? And then I would have to have a serious examination of the person putting together the roster and the person in charge of the team. I'm not telling you I think that it's time for massive sweeping wholesale changes where everybody should lose their job. But if these two critical parts, the two most important players on your team are doing their jobs and you're still not winning, how do you then not take a look at everything else?
Yeah.
The person who put together the roster and the people in charge of coaching the players on the roster. So that's where I put it. Look, this is a flawed roster. Just look at the defense. It's a flawed roster. It's an offseason we're going to go into, regardless of how the next 7 weeks unfold, where the list of things to fix and to do and to reconsider is going to be longer than it's been in quite a while. That's a reflection of the person who makes the roster, the person in charge of the roster. That doesn't ignore Duke Tobin's many successes. That doesn't say that he should be run out of town, but they whiffed in free agency this year. Their offensive line is not great. They've had a lot of recent draft picks that have not worked out. You guys were talking to Lou Anarumo yesterday about, well, Miles Murphy can't get on the field because of Joseph Osai. Like that's okay. All right. There's a lot of roster decisions that haven't panned out. Well, who's in charge of that? And so it's not about blame. It's about examining, like, why has this gone wrong and how do we fix it? I made the comparison to Joey Votto. What bothers me to no end is the Reds wasted 18 years of greatness, never advanced in the postseason. Dude had MVP caliber years, some of the greatest individual seasons in the history of the franchise for 94 lost teams. That is criminal. That is absolutely criminal. Now, one baseball player can only do so much, certainly much less compared to a quarterback, but wasting greatness. Like, at the end of the day, go back to 2020. For as much as so many of us rolled our eyes at the months-long discussions about, well, is Joe going to go to Cincinnati? Is he going to pull an Elway? Is he going to pull a Manning? Why would he want to go there? Is that where quarterbacks go to die? At the end of the day, there was this sense of he can go to Cincinnati, and maybe there's going to get a point where he's disaffected with how things are going. And then who knows what happens? That doesn't mean he's going to do what Carson Palmer did. But the guy that I've watched and listened to at the end of a handful of games this year certainly doesn't seem enamored with how things are going. And I don't know that he would look, sound, or seem the same if he was going out there completing 17 of 32 passes for 171 yards, 2 picks, and a touchdown. He is playing at an extraordinarily high level. I gave the numbers yesterday. Compared to his MVP finalist season, higher completion percentage, better interception rate, higher success rate, more yards per attempt, more yards per completion, better QBR, better passer rating. He leads the NFL in yards, touchdowns, completions, and attempts. He's having a superlative season. He is awesome. He is everything you could ask your quarterback to be. And it's for a 4-6 team that is got a chance to make the postseason, but doesn't feel remotely like a championship contender. You mean to tell me if that continues, that's not going to get to a point with Joe where he does something? What does something mean? I don't know. Doesn't mean he's going to ask his way out. Doesn't mean he's going to threaten to retire. But I cannot imagine what it must feel like to have those performances on a consistent basis wasted. And as long as they are, then you have to look at all the other factors that are contributing to the waste.
It's crazy it is to say. I mean, he's almost too good because he's given the Bengals this false sense of security that he can cover up any warts, and you don't have to do some of the things you need to do. I mean, it kind of goes back to the later years of the Marvin era. Remember the sign in the stadium, "Hope is not a plan," because all of this, what you referenced earlier, Paul, about not going out and getting a veteran corner when it appeared obvious they needed one. And it's just this hope and this faith that this roster is going to develop, and it's going to be what they expected it to be when they were scouting these guys and drafting these guys and signing these guys. And it's just not coming to fruition. And they're like, well, yeah, it's not where we need it to be, but Joe will make everything better. And he's doing everything in his power to make it better, and it's still not working out. And I'm with you, Mo. I think there's some real frustration setting in with that guy, and I don't know what his next move would be, and the contract really restricts that. But that's a guy you don't want to have be frustrated and upset. And it's getting worse by the week, it seems like.
In no business do you want your best performer to be disgruntled.
Right.
In no business. It doesn't do anybody any good. So, you can hang your hat on, well, God, he can't go anywhere for a number of years. And maybe he's not the kind of guy who would tell the Bengals, trade me or I'm going to retire. But on what planet is it good for anybody for that guy to be unhappy with his working conditions, his fellow employees, the people that he works for, the conditions surrounding him? It doesn't do anybody any good. And so that should be whatever they do this offseason. I mean, we talk about like their plan is, well, Joe's going to bail us out. The plan this offseason for my money should be, well, let's make life easier on Joe. And let's get Joe to a point where he is thrilled with everything we're doing. And if he is, the performances will probably be even better.
It's kind of like lowballing all your best players in the offseason and seeing what happens. See how that turns out for you, right? I mean, they are playing like a team of people that were all lowballed in the offseason right now, where they don't care about the team on the front, the name on the front of their chest. They care like they're playing for individuals in a lot of respects and each other, but not with that like culture-driven pride that was so much a part of what they had before. By the way, the one tweet that continues to play in my head as I watch these games lately is this one that you guys are probably very familiar with. I think a lot of people are familiar with. Every time I see an Angels highlight, it's like Mike Trout hit 3 home runs and raised his average to 528, while Shohei Ohtani did something that hasn't been done since Tungsten Armo Doyle of the 1921 Akron Groomsmen as the Tigers defeated the Angels 8-3. It's kind of became a famous tweet when Trout and Ohtani were crushing it and the Angels couldn't win anything. I feel like I'm not far from basically just cutting and replacing Burrow and Chase on that and writing about the Bengals season. I feel like that's where we're going to end up.
So sometimes I will work late at night, right? Put my daughter to bed, hang out, and I'll do work on the show or whatever late at night. And oftentimes, like I've got a bank of those Football Life shows on NFL Network. And so last week, the Dan Marino one comes on. And they start by asking him, like, is it cool that you're probably the greatest quarterback to never win a title? And he pushes back against it. He's like, no, what's cool about that, right?
Yeah.
And, you talk about, like, just one of those, like, figures of my youth that was awesome, right? It was Dan Marino consistently on these 9-7 teams, right? Where he was just putting up these ridiculous numbers. And like, as an aside, you talk about somebody who would have been a blast to watch under the modern rules. It would have been him. and I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, went to a Super Bowl in year 2. And everybody thought, he'll get back, and never got back. And I think for so many of us, we're all old enough to have watched him. The first thing you think of is, and as a contemporary of Montana and Elway and just guys that you associate with winning, he didn't. And he was better than so many guys that won titles. And holy crap, are we going to look back? And we're getting ahead of ourselves. Joe is in year 5. Yeah. But the worst thing in the world would be that a Football Life Joe Burrow is like, hey, is it you or Dan Marino that's the greatest to not win a Super Bowl? And I'm watching that and I'm like, oh my God. Oh no. Like I remember watching him, and they didn't have a running game and they didn't have a defense, and Don Shula maybe didn't age so well. And there was some bad luck and there were injuries, and I'm watching it going, and again, like the parallel is Marino year 2, he's in a Super Bowl and he lost, but it's okay. And he never got back. And I'm watching that at that TV that you can't see. And I'm like, oh my God, please, let's not have that be the case. Right. But you talk about greatness wasted. There's nothing worse. And in that sport, that's the avatar for it. And again, we might be getting ahead of ourselves. My biggest fear as a Bengals fan is that's a conversation we have one day.
Not only did he never get back, he played 17 years for a franchise with a championship pedigree that had won titles before. And that's not a situation Joe was in. Can you imagine sitting here in 2036 still talking about this 12 years from now, and Joe Burrow's in year 17?
Good Lord.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. That's the thing. But like, he's having an awesome season. How many of those? Joe might have a Hall of Fame career. He's certainly on that trajectory. But how many years like this? How many years like this will he have? Right. And
the name that pops into my head beyond Marino is one who is connected and an idol of Joe Burrow, Drew Brees. Now he gets one in 09, but if he wouldn't have gotten that one in 09, I mean, you saw throwing for 5,000 yards year after year after year, and they could never advance. They could never get back. Organizational issues, coaching issues, all of those things. And you're like, man, unbelievable. Drew Brees never got back, never won more than the one. And it's like, you wonder if that could be a part of it. By the way, you were talking about, I was referencing NFL, I always love the NFL films, especially at the end of bad years, or the year in review video, and always had some bad slogan as part of the 1999 Cincinnati Bengals fighting to the end, right? And it's like something bad like that. I think the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals, never in a million years, which was the quote from Jamar Chase the other night. And I was like, no, that's the one. That's the one that goes on the season highlight. Never in a million years would you think that these two guys would be playing this well, and you'd be talking about them possibly not making the playoffs or sitting here with a 4-6 record. Unbelievable. But he named it for us. He named the season highlight video for us.
The season highlight video was what you would get if you had parents like mine that would buy you a Sports Illustrated subscription every single year, and then you would get the VHS tape. It would always arrive like in June. Like, it took them like a half year to compile the highlights of that 4-12 season, and you would watch it, and it was unrelentingly positive, no matter what.
No doubt.
But
I always love, they go through game by game, and then all of a sudden there'd be a gap of like 2 months that they just kind of skipped over all those losses real quick.
Yeah, they would find like the one high point, like in early October.
Carl Pickens got a 70-yard touchdown pass, and by the way, now it's December.
Yeah, and yes, I mean, they were a staple of my teenage years. But you know what we do? So they lose on Thursday, but then this is how this league works. Sunday.
Oh, they're back.
Denver lost. The Colts.
Yeah.
I tell you, because I did the thing yesterday where I'm like, man, if you're Buffalo, right, you're the 2 seed, and Joe Burrow shows up as the 7. How you feel about that? Right?
How you feel about that? Yeah.
Or if you're the Baltimore Ravens and you're like, wait, we gotta play that guy again, the guy that's hung 72 on us in 2 games, like that's the thing that we're all clinging to right now. I know that the Packers won as a 7 seed last year and obliterated the Dallas Cowboys, but has there been in the brief history of this current playoff format a 7 seed with that quarterback, with that wide receiver, with that pedigree? No. And so, after Sunday, we're like, well, you know what? It's the Colts, it's the Broncos, it's the Bengals for that last spot, and they do play the Chargers. The Chargers have a tough schedule in the coming weeks. So, if they could just get in, would you want to play that team? We all did it. We all did it on Sunday night.
Yes.
Which is why I have yet, because there's been this race to be the first to say season's over. I haven't done it yet. But I might do it on Sunday night if they take the L.
You know who else has done it is Vegas. We were talking about this last night at BetMGM. The Bengals have better odds to win the AFC Championship than they do to win the division, and that's because they're so far back in the division. But still, how many times do you see teams that are buried in their division having those kind of? I mean, what was it, 22-1 to win the AFC Championship, and they're 4-6, and it's all because of the Burrow factor. I don't think anybody will want to face this team if they can squeak in. And now, last night, the Dolphins, did they re-enter the conversation? We kept saying it's going to be 9 teams for 7 spots. Do you start thinking, could the Dolphins, if Tua stays healthy, get into that conversation? But I do. If they win this game, it really does feel like it's still sitting there for them to get on some sort of roll and squeak in there.
A quarterback and a receiver like this in the 7 seed, not since Tungsten Arm O'Doyle. That's where we're at. Mo, appreciate your time. We will. I will see you this afternoon at BW3's in Blue Ash. We'll be there. 3 to 6. Make sure you catch them on ESPN 1530. Have a good one, Mo.
Okay, guys. See you. Thanks.
See you. All right. Much thanks to Mo for coming to join us. And we're going to flip it over to the live show conversation that we had with Charlie Goldsmith. Before we do that, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about something. If you want to keep the excitement going on game day, you need to grab Catan Starfares and bring some extra competition to your Sundays. Now, while the Bengals are driving down the field, you and your crew can build, trade, and outwit each other in the ultimate game of strategy, whether it's during halftime or post-game. Catan is the perfect time to reflect on the latest victory and keep the excitement of the competition with friends and family going. Visit to catanshop.com, CATAN shop.com. Use the coupon code DISTRACTION to get a 10% discount on Catan for a limited time only. All right. So last night at BetMGM Nation Kitchen and Bar at the Banks, great time at the show. Thanks to everybody that came down. Charlie Goldsmith, James Rapine, we exposed all the old takes that we had at the beginning of the season show and talked through some of them. And so we wanted to bring you this portion of our conversation with Charlie Goldsmith, where we, a lot of very defensive centric here. And this was a great conversation, and I want to bring this in here. So here is from last night with Charlie Goldsmith. All right, and for those of you watching on YouTube, good to see you. We are not going to have that Charlie Goldsmith conversation. The video element is not as good and salvageable as the audio element was. So we had a few of the issues there, but that's all right. That's all right. We are still here for you, and we're going to keep this thing rolling because we've got plenty more to come here on. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some other stuff. What did you make of our conversation with Charlie, Jay?
I thought he did a pretty good job with his takes, and not surprising. He really dives into the details of this team and spends a lot of time. I think he watches more film than any of us. He really goes back and goes over each game, goes back to past games to get ready for the next one. And I thought he was pretty spot on with most of his take. He was the one. Everybody else we were given. Now he did have a couple that, as anybody will, you're going to miss a couple ones. But of all the other ones, the other writers that we discussed their pre-week one takes for the season, there's a lot of things that are already wrong or likely to be wrong. And Charlie hit a few of them right on the head.
Yeah. Jeremy Rao had the one that Joe Burrow will date a celebrity before the year is over. It's still TBD. TBD. Still time on that one to potentially come through. But there was a lot of preseason love for Cam Taylor-Britt, who you heard us discuss at length there at the beginning of the season. And I think that's why, kind of like we were saying last night, that is a major, maybe where I would start number one on the list of things that have really gone wrong with this entire defense is that regression. And you wonder how much are the voices getting through to some of these young players, about those young players. We talked to Lou Anarumo, and he talked specifically about some of these rotations. Mo mentioned this about the Osai thing. I thought that Lou had some interesting things to say about all of the rotations in general. Mm-hmm. And Jay, you asked a great question to Lou yesterday about if these rotations are just about keeping guys fresh? Are they about somebody needs to seize these positions or whatever? And his response being, he would love to have stability in the same guy out there the entire time. And he's basically looking for somebody to go win the job. And until they do, it's going to continue to look like it does right now, which is rotations almost everywhere, especially in a secondary where that's supposed to be a thing that he doesn't ever want to do. Yeah. And, whether you're talking about Jordan Battle, who's going to continue to be in a rotation, and we also heard about Cam Taylor-Britt. I think DJ Turner seemed to be open to being rotated along with now Josh Newton and Mike Hilton coming off on third downs. There was a lot of interesting comments from Lou, I thought, in terms of how he's handling some of these players in the rotations right now.
Yeah. And it's curious because whether it's Zach or Lou, anytime you ask them, what's the biggest issue defensively? What do they always say? Consistency. And how can you have consistency when you're constantly shuffling those guys in and out, like especially in the secondary? There's a reason that Lou has never liked to do that in the past, and it is important. He always goes back to the analogy with baseball and the double play combination. You just flip the ball, the guy's going to be there, and that was so much part of the conversation in the offseason is bringing Von Bell back to get everybody on the same page, and it does seem like that has gotten better. The communication part, There's not as many missed assignments, and it's just the lack of development. And they wanted, and they're really kind of pushing the Jordan Battle thing. His usage is growing and growing and growing, and that's up at 50% right now with Von Bell. I think you're going to see it. He's going to it feels like he's going to win that or take that job away at some point down the stretch, whether the Bengals are still in it or they're playing it out. And you need to see more from these young guys. But that corner, it's really, that's the one that's really curious. And, as you said, we didn't play the James Rapine audio from last night, but he had a good question. He was, if Xavier Howard did land here, who's he replacing? Is he replacing Cam? Is he replacing DJ Turner? Is he in a rotation and they just continue to shuffle these guys through? I don't know which is the lesser of two evils right now between Cam and DJ Turner. And Josh Newton looks like he can be a guy in this league, but he's still really young, 5th round pick. I don't know how they're going to find the consistency they're looking for by playing this musical chairs in the secondary.
I mean, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
They're playing everybody they can, seeing if anybody can bring them consistency, and none of them are. And that's on all of them. That's on all of them. So the other, the Osai Murphy thing, it's basically Joe is playing hard. He feels like Osai is playing really hard, and that's why he's above Miles Murphy. He continued to say arrow up on Miles Murphy still, but is it like if you can't play him over, if you can't get in over Joseph Osai, or you can't find snaps elsewhere, whether it's taking Sam Hubbard off the field some or different ways you could move him inside, it seems crazy that we're in the middle of year 2 and we're still talking about just unable to find snaps for Miles Murphy on a team that has consistently struggled to find pass rush. So it's concern. It's interesting.
I almost wondered if that was a message to Miles, because he didn't say that he can't get on the field because Joseph Osai's playing so well. He's not getting tons of pressures and sacks, but he said he's playing hard. And is that a shot at Miles that he would be the only player in NFL history, and only defensive lineman in NFL history that didn't have a high motor. They say that about every one of these guys, and maybe that is part of the issue, is they just haven't liked the effort they've seen from Miles Murphy, because it's certainly not that Osai is being a difference maker and playing really well. Yes, he is playing hard. He's running around. He's in a contract year. He knows what's at stake, and maybe Murphy as a first-round pick is maybe taking a little bit too much for granted and not taking plays off, but not really going the way they need him to go.
Yeah, I think they just want to see, they want to feel like it means more to Miles right now, I think. And it feels like right now it doesn't mean enough to him. And so that's how you end up in this current spot where they're saying, look, it clearly means something to this guy. If you play like this guy, you'll be in there. So I think you're right on that. I think you're headed in the right direction there for sure. All right, let's get into recapping the weekend. Jay, do you have our RPB recap? How did our Run Passer Boots go?
Look at me. I've got them right here and ready. I don't even have to search for them. I'm showing growth. I'm showing consistency. This is the start of it. So we had a Ravens Run Passer Boot. It was what will be greater, Lamar's passer rating, Derrick Henry's rushing yards, or non-Zay Flower receiving yards. We both went with the exact same order. We both ran with non-Zay receiving yards, passed on Lamar passer rating, and booted Henry rushing yards, and we were exactly right. The non-Zay Flowers had 34 yards in the game. So the non-Zay Flower receiving yards for the Ravens was 256. Lamar with another great passer rating at 141, almost half of that. And then Bengals did a good job on Derrick Henry, held him to 68. So that one, maybe it sounded like a good run passer boot question at the time, but it ended up being kind of obvious, and we both nailed it. The Bengals-centric run passer boot was, again, what will be greater? Joe Burrow yards per attempt, Evan McPherson points scored, or Bengals first quarter points. I ran with first quarter points, passed on McPherson, booted yards per attempt. You ran with McPherson, passed on Burrow and booted first quarter points. It was Burrow yards per attempt. He had 7.6. The Bengals had 7 points in the first quarter, and Evan McPherson had 4 points. They went for 2. Obviously, everybody knows that. He had 4 extra points, no field goals. They passed on a couple opportunities. So that one played out. Neither of us got it right, and the yards per attempt, I booted. So I guess I would give you the edge on that one.
Yeah, I'll take the edge on that one. I think you clearly gave me the edge on that one. All right. Growler bet. So our growler bet last week was pretty simple, actually. Yeah. It was just Baltimore Ravens points scored. Baltimore Ravens points scored was, and Jay, you end up with the answer being 35, which if you were giving you nailed it, right?
Yeah.
You nailed the final score, 35-34, unbelievably. So congrats to you. Maybe you should be a winner.
You should have picked up my bar bet last night.
I mean, you should have. 35 seems like an obvious number. I mean, a very standard number. I remember when it ended, I thought, well, that's going to be that. And I want to shout out to Tanner Catchery. Shout out to Tanner. Congratulations to Tanner, because you were so close. Ooh. 36. And nobody, unbelievably, except for Jay, nobody had 35 as the number. Stunning turn of events. So shout out to everybody that participated. A number of good answers were in here, including, let's see, we had one from Daniel B, who said, get your effing bodies right, get your mind right, big growler on Thursday. Like that. This from the Andrew Whitworth interview. Ray White, the legend Ray White. Guys can be mad about growler bet a week later. It's back to business. Like that. Way to drop in a wittism in there for you. A few of these, there were a number of these in this variety. And one was from Corey Kirby. Hey, Bald, do you kiss your growler with that mouth? It's just a number of people deciding to start calling me Bald, which I'm okay with.
It's in the title.
It's right there. It's fine. And then this one, I think William does this a lot. He wants me to sing. And I think it's like trying to force me to sing. And if you come up with one that's really good, I will. So, hey, Bald, don't make it bad. Make a trade tweet for us growlers. Remember to let hope into your heart. Then you can stop being such a downer. All right. I did it. Okay, I did it. I feel like I'm being punished when I have to do these, but it's well done. You put some thought and some effort into it, so I want to pay it off. If that's considered paying it off, it's actually probably mostly punishing all of our listeners. We appreciate all of you that stick around to the end and put up with this stuff.
You're a karaoke legend. You can sing on this podcast.
That was not karaoke legend stuff right there. There's no question about that. All right. So Arby's, what do you got, Jay?
So I do this every week, and I tweet out the uniform combo for the next game. And I purposely didn't do it Friday because I was like, people are just not going to be in the mood. And we've got some time, and I normally do it on Monday anyhow because that's the day after a Sunday game. That's when most of these things happen. And so I tweeted it out yesterday. We walk in the locker room. There's the mannequin. You see what the combination is. Like, people are big time pissed about orange pants. I don't understand where the hate. I mean, I know the first time they ever wore them, they lost to the Patriots. It was a stunning upset. But I've never been that angry at a piece of clothing as some of these people on Twitter. They hate the orange pants. They want them shot into the sun. Never wear them again. I don't understand where this hate comes from. Have you ever been mad at an article of clothing?
Potentially. But I don't think they look great. Like, I'm not. I'm certainly not an orange pants person. But it's just a uniform combo. So I'm not going to get bent out of shape about it. That said, I had to go. I was going back and rewatching some film from earlier this year, just going through a cut up of a bunch of different situations. And the first thing that popped up was something from that New England game, and I was like, "Oh God, I forgot about the orange pants." Golly, it's just brutal. And now the orange pants with the white, maybe it'll be a better combo. I don't know, but
yeah, maybe under the lights it'll look better.
Yeah, it'd be I think we'd all prefer not to see the orange pants anymore. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable in saying that. I'm not bent out of shape about it, but I'm comfortable in saying.
And the thing is, by proxy, they're going to look even worse because you have one of the best uniforms in the league. That the Chargers are going to be wearing their powder blues again. So that is. Sometimes you get games where it's a really cool combination of the home and the road team, their uniforms. This might be apparel wise a blowout for the Chargers.
Yeah. Mine is one last thing from the trip to Baltimore. And that is, when these primetime road games stink, like especially on the East Coast, we had to get back early the next day. So we take an early flight back in the morning after. And you know how it is. Like when we write and record, we don't leave the stadium until very late after a game. I mean, on a 1:00 game, we'll leave. Oh, unless you're doing a time lapse, you might be there till 10:30 at night, right, Jay?
Yeah, right.
But you're looking at 7 hours after a game, sometimes 8, sometimes that you're after the start of the game that you're still there. So if a game goes off, I mean, we could be there at 3 a.m. and it goes that way sometimes. And when you're on the road and you've got a 7:30 flight, that means sometimes you're just like, I'll just go straight. I'll go straight to the airport, or at the very least, you're getting one of these little mini naps that you basically take before you go from your hotel to the airport. And that's what I ended up with after the Baltimore game. I got to bed at a decent hour for all things considered, but had an early flight and knew I need to get up at 7:20, and I was going to bed around like 3:30, 4 o'clock by the time I was able to wind down. And so you've got this stuff like, okay, that's not bad. I got a 3.5 hour window. This is great. That's a nice little window. I'll be good. That'll get me through the day. Unbeknownst to me, at my hotel, somebody somehow set the alarm clock on the nightstand alarm for 6 o'clock a.m. I didn't do it. At least I don't think I did it. If I did, it was by accident somehow. But it goes off, and I wake up wondering what is going off, what alarm is happening, where am I, what city is it, what time is it? Because you're in the middle of that deep 3-hour nap. I am hitting everything I can find. I don't know what's making the sound. I'm like, is it my phone? I'm hitting my phone, trying to figure it out. I'm just whacking at the alarm. I have no idea what the hell is going on. I'm like, finally figure out how to turn this alarm off on that thing. It was almost at the point where I was going to have to rip it out of the wall or like stick it in a pillow or something like that. I'm like, can it not be this time? Right I have 3 hours to sleep, and you put it right smack dab in the middle of the 3 hours that I have to have the alarm suddenly go off. And I feel like it would be somebody like you playing a prank on the next person to be in the room. This is exactly the kind of crap that you did, Jay. This is what you would have done.
I have done it. I have done that before, and that's why when I go into a hotel room, the first thing I do is I unplug the alarm clock. I don't need it. I don't need to know what time. I've got it on my phone. I don't need to know what time it is at any given time, and I sure don't need an alarm. My phone serves as my alarm. So that before using the bathroom, before doing anything else, you walk in the room, unplug the alarm clock.
It's just crazy. You shouldn't think that people would do that. And the first thing you think of is somebody's definitely set an alarm on me, no doubt, trying to play a trick on me. That shouldn't be like that. Shouldn't be like that.
It's a cruel world.
So I know. I feel like I barely feel like I'm all the way back after this weekend. I'm back, but still feel like I'm fighting it. That was a brutal. It's just so hard to wake up and not know where the sound is coming from.
Yeah.
It's just like, what is happening? Anyway. So, but don't worry, another primetime road game awaits, this time on the West Coast in LA. So we will have everything from out there. Of course, Jay and I will have PD and J previewing this weekend against the Chargers for you on Thursday. And thanks again to everybody that came out to the live show last night. Great time. Really enjoyed it, and great conversation. Charlie and James, and saw many people. And then hopefully you can come to our Todd Frazier, my favorite game, the 2015 Home Run Derby rewatch that we will be doing down there on the 21st. The panel discussion with myself and C. Trent and Jim Day and Todd Frazier will be at 7 o'clock. We'll re-air the Home Run Derby before that from 5 to 7. So you can come down and watch, and then eat dinner, drink some $3 Cincy Lights, and all the other great selection of food and beverages that they have. We sampled some last night, had the quesadilla burger last night, crushed it, convinced James to have it. He crushed it. He was officially like, oh, okay, I get it now. So just that easy. So you can come down too, and hopefully we'll see you guys down there at that show. But
It's-
anyway, after
So you know what that shows also? It's a Thursday night. It's a second chance drawing. So
ooh,
great chance for everybody to come down and watch the Growler Pod and see Todd Frazier relive the home run derby and maybe battle me for a gift card.
take down the champ, as they say. So, all right, Jay, appreciate it, and we will talk to y'all next time. Have a good one.